Good morning, Munsey Park School. It's Wednesday, and it is time for our morning announcements. Are we ready, Thomas?
Yes.
Good morning, Munsey Park School. Today is Wednesday, April 15th, 2020. My name is Colin Gibbs, and I am from Mrs. Cash's 6th grade class.
And my name is William Gibbs, and I am from Mrs. Brady's 4th grade class. Please stand for the pledge.
Ow.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. We will now hear some important announcements from Mr. Nolan.
Thank you very much, Colin and William. Good morning, Munsey Park School, boys and girls, teachers, and staff. Happy Wednesday to you all. I want to give a shout out to those boys and girls who participated in our Flipgrid Challenge. They are Adriana V, Zoe L, Sophia P, Benjamin J, Julia P, Mary P, and Juliana M. Hi, Thomas. Today is National Rubber Eraser Day, and rubber eraser is a good thing to use when we make a mistake. We can erase it thanks to the rubber eraser. Today is also National Take a Wild Guess Day, and it is also National Titanic Day. Back on April 15th of 1912, the Titanic sunk in the icy waters off of the North Atlantic Ocean after hitting an iceberg. So we remember the Titanic today. We have mindful words of the day that come out of our morning mantra book, and they are, the best preparation for tomorrow is doing your best today. And that's by H. Jackson Brown. Boys and girls, don't forget to show your 3 R's, respectful, responsible role model, and don't forget to show your amazing character in your words, your actions, and your attitude. Make it a great one. Let the day begin. And we are ready for a story. Ready for a story?
Yes.
Okay, come. So the story that we're going to share today, Thomas, is one of my favorites. It's called The Little House. Well, what do you see there in the middle? What's that?
A door.
That's a door to a house. So here comes the story, The Little House. Okay, here we go. Once upon a time, there was a little house way out in the country. She was a pretty little house, and she was strong and well built. The man who built her so well said, "This little house shall never be sold for gold or silver, and she will live to see our great-great-grandchildren's great-great-grandchildren living in her." In the house.
I don't have fire.
The little house was very happy as she sat on the hill.
Son.
You come here, sit with me. As she sat on the hill and watched the countryside around her. She watched the sun rise in the morning. She watched the sunset in the evening. Day followed day, each one a little different from the one before, but the little house stayed just the same. Can we put this down here? We need that later. Here we go. In the nights, she watched the moon grow from a thin new moon to a full moon, then back again to a thin old moon. And when there was no moon, she watched the stars. Way off in the distance, she could see the lights of the city. The little house was curious about the city and wondered what it would be like to live there.
Is it a house in the moon?
Yeah, you see in the moon. Good job. Watch. Let's see what happens next.
Ooh.
Time passed quickly for the little house as she watched the countryside slowly change with the seasons. In the spring, when the days grew longer and the sun warmer, she waited for the first robin to return from the south. She watched the grass turn green. She watched the buds on the trees swell and the apple trees burst into blossom. She watched the children playing in the brook. You see the brook? See the water? Yeah. Ooh. In the long summer days, she sat in the sun and watched the trees cover themselves with leaves and the white daisies over the hill. She watched the gardens grow, and she watched the apples turn red and ripen. She watched the children in the swimming pool.
Wait.
Oh, look.
Ooh, look.
What color?
Orange.
In the fall, when the days grew shorter and the nights colder, she watched the first frost turn the leaves to bright yellow and orange and red. She watched the harvest gathered and the apples picked. She watched the children going back to school. In the winter, when the nights were long and the days short and the countryside covered with snow, she watched the children coasting and skating. Year followed year, the apple trees grew old and the new ones were planted. The children grew up and went away to the city, and now at night, the lights of the city seem brighter and closer. Let's see what happens.
Ooh, what color is this?
One day, the little house was surprised to see a horseless carriage coming down the winding country road. And pretty soon, there were more of them on the road and fewer carriages pulled by horses. Pretty soon, along came some surveyors and surveyed a line in front of the little house. Pretty soon, along came a steam shovel and dug a road. Then some trucks came and dumped big stones on the road. Then some trucks with tar and sand, and finally a steamroller came and rolled it all smooth. And the road was done. Do you see the digger?
You see the train?
Uh-huh. That's a truck. Okay, watch your hands. Now the little house watched and the trucks and automobiles going back and forth to the city. Gasoline stations, roadside stands, and small houses followed the new road. Everyone and everything moved much faster than before. Watch, Thomas, look. Look at the buildings. More roads were made, and the countryside was divided into lots. More houses and bigger houses, apartment houses, tenement houses, schools, stores, and garages spread over the land and crowded around the little house. No one wanted to live in her and take care of her anymore. She couldn't be sold for gold or silver, so she just stayed there and watched. Can you sit on that lap for a minute? Come here. Thank you. Okay. Hands down. Okay, good boy. Now it was not so quiet and peaceful at night. Now the lights of the city were bright and very close, and the street lights shone all night. This must be living in the city, thought the little house, and didn't know whether she liked it or not. She missed the fields of daisies and the apple trees dancing in the moonlight. Pretty soon there were trolley cars going back and forth in front of the little house. They went back and forth all day and part of the night. Everyone seemed to be very busy and everyone seemed to be in a hurry. See the train? Yeah. Help me turn the page. Pretty soon there was an elevated train going back and forth above the little house. The air was filled with dust and smoke, and the noise was so loud, and it shook the little house. Now she couldn't tell when spring came, or summer, or fall, or winter. It all seemed about the same. See the train? Put your hands down. Let me turn the page. There you go. Good boy. Pretty soon there was a subway going back and forth underneath the little house. She couldn't see it, but she could feel and hear it. People were moving faster and faster. No one noticed the little house anymore. They hurried by without a glance. Do you see the little house in there? Yeah. All right, let's see. Oh, look. Pretty soon, they tore down the apartment houses and tenement houses around the little house. And they started digging big cellars, one on each side. The steam shovels dug and dug 3 stories on one side and 4 stories on the other side. Pretty soon, they started building up. They built up 25 stories on one side and 35 stories on the other. See the buildings going on? Let me turn the page, Thomas. Turn the page. There we go. Now the little house only saw the sun at noon and didn't see the moon or stars at night at all because the lights of the city were too bright. She didn't like living in the city. At night she used to dream of the country and the fields of daisies and the apple trees dancing in the moonlight. The little house was very sad and lonely. Her paint was cracked and dirty, her windows were broken, and her shutters hung crookedly. She looked shabby, though she was just as good a house as ever underneath. Help that up on the page. On the page. Good boy. Okay. Then one fine morning in spring, along came the great-great-granddaughter of the man who built the little house so well. She saw the shabby little house, but she didn't hurry by. There was something about the little house that made her stop and look again. She said to her husband, "That little house looks just like the little house my grandmother lived in when she was a little girl. Only that little house was way out in the country, on a hill covered with daisies and apple trees growing around." Yeah, let's see what happens. In your hands here, okay? They found out it was the very same house, so they went to the movers to see if the little house could be moved. The movers looked the little house all over and said, "Sure, this house is good as ever. She's built so well we can move her anywhere." So they picked up the little house, put her on wheels. Traffic was held up for hours as they moved her out of the city. Look, they're moving the house out of the city, Thomas. At first, the little house was frightened, but after she got used to it, she rather liked it. They rolled along the big road, and they rolled along the little roads until they were way out in the country. When the little house saw the green grass and heard the birds singing, she didn't feel sad anymore. They went along and along, but they couldn't seem to find just the right place. They tried the little house here. They tried the little house there. Finally, they saw a little hill in the middle of a field. Do you see the house? Point to the house. "There," said the great-great-granddaughter. "That's just the place." "Yes, it is," said the little house to herself. A cellar was dug on top of the hill, and slowly they moved the house from the road to the hill. The windows and shutters were fixed, and once again they painted her a lovely shade of pink as the little house settled down on her new foundation and smiled happily. Once again, she could watch the sun and moons and stars. Once again, she could watch spring, summer, fall, and winter come and go. Once again, she was lived in and was taken care of. Last page, Thomas.
It's blue.
Never again would she be curious about the city. Never again would she want to live there. The stars twinkled above her. A new moon was coming up. It was spring, and all was quiet and peaceful in the country. And the end. That was The Little House by Virginia Lee Burton. And this is a Caldecott Medal book. And it read with permission from Scholastic. Wasn't that a nice story? Yeah. So we have a Flipgrid challenge. And the Flipgrid challenge, boys and girls, is this. If your house could talk, how would it describe where it is? Write and draw your description and share it on Flipgrid. And here is the code. You want to hold it up, Thomas?
Yeah.
Here it is. You're going to go to code Munsey Park and share your story with me. I want to wish you all a great Wednesday. Have a great learning day. Let the day begin.